All right. Welcome. If you're watching the replay, this is Launchpath. I started this series of conversations um, for people who are looking at changing their career one way or another for career reinvention. My name is Ladijia. I'm a career transition consultant, and I help experienced professionals um, convert their skills either to by landing a new job or by starting their own consulting businesses. And with me today is Verity Colbert. Now, let me tell you the background. So, I meet a lot of people who talk about, especially in the current climate where the job market is so tough, but also people who are at the point in their careers where they want to do something else, want to do something meaningful. And what happens with a lot of these journeys is people come against the roadblock of one, how do I decide what I'm going to do next? And then two, how do I even change, especially when people are not, when they apply for different jobs, people are always insisting similar experience. So when I came across Verity, how I came across her post. She was talking about her career change and just how much meaning and joy it has brought to her. And I was like, that's a story I would love to share. So I reached out to her and she agreed to come and share her story now. Verity made a change. She spent a long time impacting young minds as a head of math, right? And she's now done the pivot from guiding students to helping families as a financial planner. And I will invite her to share her story shortly. But first, Verity, I'm really curious. What was the exact moment that you decided that you had to make a change?
Ooh, that's quite a big question, and I can sort of almost feel myself feeling quite emotional listening to you sort of talking about that. I was head of maths for 14 years as head of maths, 18 years as a teacher. I'd gone straight from school to university to being a teacher, and I absolutely loved it for a lot of that time. And the positive, moments of helping children and seeing them believe in themselves and understand maths better and feel more confident with it was great. But unfortunately, I'm not going to sit here and spend too long saying that it changed effectively, and that the education system for me was becoming a much harder place to work, and it was chipping away at the Verity Corbett that you see here today. And I was finding it harder and harder to do the good job that I wanted to do. There was more and more pressures from different angles. And actually, at the end of the day, that was what was sort of killing me inside, was the fact that it was the children that were suffering, and I couldn't be the teacher that I used to be. We did have Ofsted as well, the whole school. We had Ofsted. Was it just before, just after? I think it was just before my 40th birthday. And I know it shouldn't matter, but I think if you said what was the moment, most of my friends were going away for long weekends, were doing this, that, and the other. I was going home crying because I didn't know if I'd done well enough, and I was struggling to manage everything because of, an Ofsted compounded that. And I just thought, what are you doing? I've got a little boy, I've got a lovely husband, I've got so many things that I should be thankful for. And I was under this cloud of negativity, really, and just finding things difficult. And so it took us quite, to the actual make the decision was a long one. That was in the October, and I think probably by the January I knew it was definitely going to happen. I didn't know what, but I knew that I was not going to be a teacher in September, the following September. So yeah, I think, that, whether it was my 40th birthday, I sort of sometimes think it was just that moment where, for whatever reason, it's just a number, isn't it, really? But it happens to be a multiple of 10 that we celebrate a bit more. And mine was pretty miserable. And I just thought, is this really what it's come to? So I looked for something else.
I really feel you there. I feel you there. When I decided to pivot to focusing on career transition coaching myself, it was ahead of I was going to be 49, I think. I was going to be 49. And I asked myself, you're going to be 50 next year.
Mm-hmm.
What what would you like your life to be counted in? And I decided it was lives. So I feel you. I feel you right there. So you made the decision that you were not going to be a teacher anymore. How did you arrive at financial planning?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I don't know whether my husband will listen to this video, but I've got an awful lot to thank him for. He has rejuvenated himself and changed roles and they've evolved far more than mine ever did. I just taught maths. And so he had more ideas than me, I suppose. And he genuinely sat down with me at one point with a blank piece of paper and said, right, Verity, not necessarily what job do you want to do, but what do you want it to include and what do you want to have out of it? Do you want to work 10 hours a week but not have as much money? Probably. Do you want to earn loads of money? Do you want to have lots of holidays? Do you want to sit in an office? What do you want? And I was like, I don't know, and I was a bit rubbish to start with. And we managed to develop and evolve that. And then I started to reach out to people. We sort of got lists of, well, what do we want? I didn't want to be in the office all the time. I wanted to be able to still work with people. I wanted variety. I wanted some sort of autonomy in terms of being head of maths. I was sort of in charge of my own team, and I didn't need to be in charge of a team, but I wanted to have flexibility in what I did and when, rather than sort of having set times for set things, so that I could manage myself a bit because I was used to doing that. And then it evolved. So I started to contact different jobs or people in jobs or companies that had what I thought might be the right skill set. And I also found listening and finding podcasts and things like that were really useful. I got in touch with somebody who was connected. They weren't actually a financial planner quite, but they were connected to financial planning that we knew. And he spent a long time talking to me. Had ended up having a couple of meetings with him. And then there was a couple of podcasts that I listened to, and I started to think, you know what, this is really something that I think I'd like to do. I also investigated the qualification side, because I was conscious, being 40, having a mortgage and all the rest of it, that I had to be aware of the money side of things to be able to pay all the bills. So I needed to know that I could qualify, or that it was going to be manageable, really, that the change was going to be manageable. And I after, it was quite a lot of time. This was over the course of
6
2
months?
months. No, it was quicker than that. So, I mean, I resigned in the May, but I probably knew from around the April that it was financial planning. So if we say, I suppose Ofsted was October, decided I was definitely going to go January. So probably properly researching between January and April.
You've called out a couple of things that we always ask people to do when they start to consider a career pivot, which is, first of all, what are the things that would make a job? What are the things you want, right? What do you want, and what don't you want? A lot of people aren't quite sure what they want, but they're quite clear what they don't want. Yes. And I always say, start with that. With a lot of my candidates, I say, go and think about it. Come back and tell me 10 things that your job has to be, and the organization you want to join has to be, for it to bring joy. The other thing you highlighted was just researching it, actually talking to the people who are doing the thing now, in addition to all the other kinds of research. Very, very useful. And so what were some of the things you were afraid of when you began to explore and decide?
Well, on the whole, at least, I was a very well-respected head of maths. I was well-liked by the other teachers. I was well-liked by the parents and by most of the students, I think. And obviously that was massive, to leave that and to go somewhere else where I didn't know for definite whether I was going to like it. I didn't know how easy or hard I was going to find the exams and the qualifications. I actually resigned before I had a job because of the way that teaching works. I resigned in the beginning of May to give them time to replace me for the September. And I didn't actually get my job here confirmed until June or July. So that was quite daunting. But I was confident that if I really needed to, I could do supply teaching. I've actually got a lorry license, so I could drive a lorry, although I don't know how well I'd do at that. And I could do temping. So I sort of thought, well, you can fill the gap until you do get one. But I was already in conversations with Crofton Oaks, and I was very much hoping that they would offer me the role, which they did in the end. So I think it was just the fear of the unknown, really, and going from something which was so safe. You always hear teaching is safe. You've got a good pension. You've got, you're not that easy to get rid of. Not that they wanted me to. And then you're going, just changing everything. And when you don't live at home with your mum and dad, and actually the bills are all down on you and your family, what if I made my son suffer because I struggled and we couldn't then afford something? Or so I think for me it was mostly around just the fear of the unknown.
A few things that you pointed out there that I think are really helpful is, yes, you face it head on, but there were a few plan Bs, right? Fallback, just in case.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing I would say is it's useful to have a think about, what if I don't land as quickly, right, as I'd hoped to? What's my stopgap measure? I've had one candidate tell me she decided to let out rooms in her house, right, in the interim to clear housekeeping at least. So that's one great tip. Now, one other thing people struggle with is finding the actual opportunities. Where do I apply? How do I find potential employers? What's your own take on that?
I've only done it the once, and I don't know if I was very lucky or I just did all the right things. I think it's probably a combination of the two. So I didn't really have a CV, because in teaching you go from one school to another and you use their application form. You don't really have a CV as such. So I created one of those and spent time trying to teach. As a teacher, you do have a really wide skill set, and I did have, and I still have, lots of skills that would lend itself to lots and lots of jobs. So I tried to think about, right, well, what are my skills that will lend themselves particularly to financial planning from what I'd learnt, and make sure that that was what was emphasised the most in the CV to catch the eye of people that I sent it to. I made sure that, again, I continued to do that research into the role and into the sort of the profession, so that if and when I spoke to people, I didn't seem totally clueless, even though I didn't have all the qualifications at that point. And then, to be honest, the next thing that I did was created an email, and I sent it to lots of local companies, starting the one that I most wanted to work with. Genuinely, Crofton Oaks was at the top, because they're an independent chartered financial planning company that's 10 minutes from my house. They're not absolutely tiny. So for me, I didn't want to work on my own straight away. I thought that would be too daunting. When I was new to the industry, I wanted an office space where I could learn, but I also didn't want to travel an hour and a half to an office space, because that would eat into the time that was so important for me to try and keep having with my family. So that's where I think did the look come in, because I did get my number one choice. It was whether it was the timing. One of the directors replied to my email and said, "Thank you for your CV. It looks really interesting. Would you like to come in and talk to us?" And it went from there. Other companies I did talk to, and I spoke to about it, but if I'm honest, I held out until they said they wouldn't be ready to offer me something until June, July, because of things within the business that they needed to see how that worked out. So that's why I did have that longer period. But I was talking to probably 4 or 5 different companies that some of them would have been self-employed straight away. So they had a lot less to sort of lose, I suppose, by taking me on. And that wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. But I suppose perhaps if Crofton Oaks or the other sort of employed roles within an existing company hadn't come off, then that is something I perhaps would have considered. But I didn't need to make that decision. I was offered a role here, and I've been very happy since. So I do think there was an element of luck, but hopefully I did all the right things with being proactive, contacting them, coming across well in the conversations, having a CV, all that type of thing.
I'm curious though, what was in that email? Because it sounds like it had a really high conversion rate.
I had a few people. I mean, I don't think many didn't come back to me. Most people were polite enough to reply, even if they said, "Thank you for your CV. It looks very good, but we're not sort of taking on anybody at the moment." As I say, the self-employed roles, they are far more willing to talk to lots of people. So I suppose that skewed it slightly. But I mean, I do have quite good exam results as well, which I think helps. And the other thing I will say is I think the fact that I've got maths, not that you desperately need really good maths to be a financial planner, but I think it does make you stand out a little bit. When you say to somebody as a head of maths, I mean, I don't talk about it so much now, but quite often are sort of daunted by maths. So the fact that you were the head of the maths department, I think they sort of think, oh, well, you. So I think that's where actually your previous job, whatever it is, it doesn't matter whether it's head of maths, whether it was office manager, whether it was, whatever it was, it's about picking out the bits of that are important for your next job and being able to use them to sell yourself and to show that it will be useful for the next job.
Yeah.
And so I think hopefully that's what the email did.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, what surprised you the most about making such a big career shift?
Another good question. Surprised me the most. I think how different it was just to being in a school. I think I remember to start with my evenings, I was just so it was so weird that I didn't have any evening work to do. And when I finished at 5 o'clock, it was like, oh, I've really finished. What do I do? I mean, I even went to the gym for a little while and did a gym class. And then you do get used to it and you do sort of start to do things. But that was very strange on a sort of personal level. And then I think it was just the opportunities that it's. I mean, I can only talk about teaching, and I do think that teaching is can be very tunnel vision, and there's this massive world out there with these fascinating companies and people that run them, and it's just, and I just think, God, there's this. I'm just so intrigued to learn more about it and to meet more people and to talk to them about it. And I'm very fortunate that the job that I do still get now, instead of meeting lots of young people, I meet lots of adults and families, both when I do go to networking and meet other sort of business owners and people who do go to those sorts of things, and also the clients that we look after. And I love that. I think that's I've been surprised by perhaps what a small version of the world I was perhaps in before.
So what I can hear is so much more out there. So much more. So what skill from teaching turned out to be a superpower in financial planning?
I think predominantly it's the psychology side of it. I mean, the other half of my degree was psychology, so I think that's where the wanting to work with people has always come from, and they absolutely fascinate me. So I used to work with young people and try and use the sort of psychology that I knew to help them. So some people you need to be really firm with, but then really encouraging with their maths when they could do it. Other people, if you were too firm to start with, they'd never start. So you needed to be really sort of metaphorical, arm around the shoulder and nurturing of them, and then really encouraging. So I think for me, that's just evolved now into adults, and it's just about people and being kind, being caring, being sort of respectful of them. And when my clients come and some of them share things about themselves and their finances that they don't tell anybody, and they can be grieving for a loved one. It could be all sorts of things. And I think that trying to read the room and read what is going to be right to help them as much as I possibly can, which I think it's just evolved from young people into adults, and hopefully that's something that I
Mm.
most of the time get right.
I find it interesting that you highlighted the people aspect of it. At the end of the day, all work is people, right? If you can master the people piece, then you can do pretty much anything that you
Yeah.
set your mind to. Is the people, always the people. Um, my next question would be, um, now that you're in this new career, right? What's the biggest, for want of a better word, boon? What's the biggest thing about it that you like, that satisfies you, that has met your need or your expectation?
It's back to what I said again. It's people. It's people coming into an appointment sometimes, and especially new clients, and being obviously anxious, obviously going through something. Not all the time, I'm not saying every client that walks in is grieving, but quite often new clients, they have there's some reason that they've got in touch, isn't there? There's something that's prompted a need to sit down. They're worried about their finances. They've read something. They've realised they're about to retire and they haven't done anything yet, or they've spoken to somebody who's their age who's done loads already and they haven't done a thing. They've inherited some money and they don't know what to do with it, and they feel pressure to try and do the right thing because it was somebody that they really love that they got it from. All sorts of different reasons. And for me, it's where you see their breaths sort of relaxing during the meeting, and the anxiety in their face turning into a bit of a smile. And if there's two people, if there's a couple, then they start to talk about, I feel so much better. This is, we can do that, can't we? And you can, and they, at time to time, they have a little conversation between themselves about sort of, you can see that they're starting to see the future rather than coming in not having a clue where it is. And for me, it is genuinely that making a difference. And then my favorite is where, because a lot of our clients, we then continue to make a difference to them in that they become our clients on a rolling basis. Others sort of come back to us as and when they need us. But most of them, then they become one of our clients, one of my clients. And I love it when you get to see them in a year's time and you say, how was the wedding? Or how's that gone? Did everything go? Did you move house? Or they ring you up to tell you that they've moved house, and it was, so again, it's that longer term. So with the new clients, it's that anxiety and then with the ongoing clients, once you've hopefully made them feel at ease and created a plan, it's then monitoring and maintaining that for them and help and that longevity of being that person that they trust and that you're going to be there for them when they need you. And I just love that.
Delivering transformation one family at a time, or one
I like
client at a time.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's it, really. I was listening to you and nodding along because it's kind of like the same thing for me. You walk with someone through a particular part of their journey and they get to the other side. Not everyone who I speak with lands a role while we're engaged, but almost always I get the email back, Laddie, I'm so happy to tell you I finally landed it. And it's just, being a part of that transformation.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other question, and we talked about this a little bit before we started, and I really think it's important. One thing people struggle with, and whether it's you're pivoting or you're looking for a job or you're starting your own business, the one thing that people struggle with is networking. And I was saying to you that when I checked you out before I reached out to you, I saw from your page that it seems to be a superpower for you, networking. So, let's talk about that. How do you do it?
I think some of these things, I was so naive. I didn't even know sort of networking existed, really. And then I suppose, if I'm really honest, before I'd qualified, it was an opportunity to leave the office and go and do something else for a little bit. I suppose to start with, you sort of, I was with the mindset that, obviously within reason, say yes to every opportunity. So when my bosses sort of said, do you want to go and do a bit of networking? I thought, oh, what's networking? They explained. So you get to go and eat biscuits, drink coffee and chat to people. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. But actually, it has become far more than that. And for me now, I have to taper it because I'm so busy looking after clients. But I try and get a bit of a mix with including that, because it's enabled me to, I suppose it comes back to that narrow vision that I perhaps had before. If I'd have just become a financial planner but never left the office, I still would have had that narrow vision. And now I can see I've got all sorts of trusted acquaintances, professional acquaintances that I've met. I know lots of people who have got great businesses who I would happily tell my clients about, or my friends or family if they needed somebody. And I want to, being sort of in business or part of a business is not that easy, especially at the moment. There's so many things that are making it hard for everybody, that I want my sort of acquaintances, businesses to do well. So you get that real feeling of community and sort of compassion for them and will for them to do okay. And then hopefully, I'd like to think that over time, it doesn't happen straight away, but they get that for me as well. And it does build, people talk a lot about, genuine relationships. You can't go to one networking and expect somebody to send you a load of stuff, because, you wouldn't send your granny to somebody that you'd only just met once unless you were absolutely sure. So, but over time, they start to say, well, Verity Corbett, she is what she says she is. She does do the things she says she does. She is trustworthy. She is kind. She doesn't keep changing her what she says she's doing. She's consistent. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I know somebody who used her and she did look after them, and vice versa, So I think for me, it is a piece of me trying to make sure that people know the real me, and that then in turn, as a secondary, has helped me to increase my clients. But in the journey, I'm having a lovely time drinking coffee, eating biscuits. Don't tell me.
I like that. I like that perspective. I do, actually. I do. And just listening to you, things that come out from is patience, right? That point you made about you can't meet someone today and expect, to draw down from their goodwill today. So the patience, the building long-term authentic relationships.
Absolutely.
But the thing that stands out the most to me from what you said is also connecting other people, right? So it's not about you, just you. It's looking out for opportunities for other people and being the connector. So community. That's a really interesting perspective to take, because I imagine that if I was going to this event, not because I wanted to sell anything, but because I genuinely wanted to meet people and I wanted to connect people, if it's no longer about me, then it gets easier, it does get easier. Now, if someone, I want you to talk to my people now, right?
Okay.
Someone feels like they really, really, really want to make the change. They're feeling the pull. What would you tell them, right? Someone who wants to make the change but isn't quite sure what that difference is. What would be your advice?
I think you need a blank piece of paper. I think I like your idea of what you don't want it to be. I think that's easier to start with. And I think for me, one of the things was imagining still being like that at, say, 60. So projecting forward and thinking, what will I be like if I'm like this now and I feel like this now? What will I be like in 10 years? What will I feel like in 10 years? And most people will say, and I do believe this, that it's probably more common to regret the things you didn't do than to regret the things that you did. Now, that's not to say to go into it, without thinking about it, but actually, I think there's that thing, isn't there, where, you can, if you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps straight out. But if you put a frog in cold water and slowly warm it up, unfortunately, as awful as it sounds, apparently, I've never tried it, the frog boils to death. And sometimes if you're not careful, you keep waiting for that trigger moment. And as I say, I can absolutely tell you what mine was, although I think the 40, the offs did and my husband was nagging at me very, this is no good, you can't stay. So you've almost got to make that moment yourself and just do something. Something is a step in the right direction.
I like that. Do something. I often tell people, well, even if you can't take the huge, big leap right now, what's a small step you can take?
Yeah.
Small projects, small conversation. You can do it incrementally also. Well, I mean, we're almost at time now. This has been really, really interesting, Verity. You've walked a powerful journey, and it's just it's great to see someone who has done the journey, who has landed on the other side, who is enjoying, the transition that they've made. If someone wanted to reach out to you to ask you any questions, would you be open to that?
Yeah, I would love. I'm very passionate about that. It's that helping people again, isn't it? And I can't get away from that. Whether it's children, families with their finances, or people that want to have a career change, it's been absolutely revolutionary for me. I genuinely am a much happier person in my new role, and I'm so excited about that big world out there and where it might take me. So if I can support somebody in that, then I would be more than happy to help. Please do get in touch and let me.
Wonderful. And you
Helpful.
can reach Verity. I have Verity's LinkedIn URL right on screen. You can reach out to her. She's happy to, excuse me, answer questions. And of course, I'll be here in another 2 weeks with another guest. My name is Ladijia. Feel free to follow me and reach out to me if you have questions as well. Verity, thank you so
Thank
much for
you
sharing
very
this.
much. Yeah,
All
thank you,
right.
everybody. Thank you.
All right then. Bye.
Bye.